name is John. Oh, no, there we are. Good day to you all. My name is John Anderson. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I see a few friendly faces here. Of course, I ask you how you are. You cannot respond to me. I'm in a place of power, am I not? I suppose I should introduce myself, and I should explain sort of where we are right now, because I understand some of you came to visit with me expecting to meet somebody else who's going to speak on the general's retirement. I can do a bit of that. I mean, the general is retired. This year of 98, this past year, 97, the general came back from the presidency. And actually, at that point, he'd hired my father, James Anderson, to be his estate manager. My father, he came to work for the general, and he'd been distilling up until this point, working for a few different small distillers all throughout Virginia. And he came to visit with the general, looking around, saying, oh, well, I could do this, I could do this. And he says, General, you know, you have rye and you have corn. I have a receipt for whiskey. Why don't we make whiskey? Now, the general is certainly a man who is a wealthy Virginian. So I should say, in that, he is wealthy in terms of land. He's not wealthy in terms of cash, per se. And so his ears perked up at it. That said, the general is a cautious, slow, and steady man to decide upon near anything. And so he decided to try it out in the cooperage. Let's see, it was January that my father suggested it. And then in February, we built the cooperage. Let's see. It was about 270 gallons in, built it in the cooperage. About 270 gallons, made about 600 gallons that year, which is typical. Probably this year, now that we have made a 5 still, let's see, 677 gallon distillery, we are probably going to be able to end up making about 4,000 or 5,000 gallons this year of 98. Probably next year, upwards of 90, in 99, upwards of what, 10, perhaps 11,000 gallons. Most distilleries, as I said, make about 600, 650 in a year. Not usually distilling more than a month out of the year. We'll be distilling as much as we can all throughout the year. So you can imagine this is going to get the general quite a bit of money. General Washington is probably going to be selling it at around 60 cents to $1 on the gallon, depending on if it's the common or the rectified whiskey, twice distilled, or the 4 times distilled whiskey. So probably if we end up making around 10,000 gallons, we can get upwards of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, probably something like that. I'd say over $1,000 pure profit. So not bad. If you count the livestock in there, you can get upwards of $2,000 pure profit. So, you know, the general is smiling. He's a bit of a stoic man, so he's smiling inwardly, but smiling nonetheless. So, but anyways, I have yammered on long enough. I understand that many of you have questions, so I suppose we should get to that, right? This should be a conversation, not just a presentation. Let's see, does the general enjoy whiskey as much as he enjoys wine, or is it mostly for sale? It's mostly for sale. The general has certainly drank whiskey before. I don't know that the general prefers it. He much prefers wine. He has a sweeter palate. The general does, a bit of a sweet tooth. General Washington, to that, prefers Madeira, the sweeter Madeira wines, the fortified dessert wines you see coming over from Portugal. It's actually very common. It used to be very common before the War for Independence, wine in general, but specifically Portuguese wine, and this is because, for 2 reasons. Portuguese wine, for one, this fortified wine, typically travels across the Atlantic far better than the more delicate French wines. In fact, it was not uncommon, in the slightest, to, if you're having a ship go around the world, then you might as well just put a little bit of casks of Madeira, just tuck them aside. You're not going to sell it or anything. The sloshing, right, and the heat of the ship itself is said to improve it. But not only that, actually politically, for a time there, I mean, before the War for Independence, this was Britain, right? Britain and France don't always get along. So these French wines, they were disallowed from this continent for quite some time. After the War for Independence, though, that changed. And now the general does enjoy a good claret, a good champagne, But yes, ultimately, he much prefers wine to whiskey. He just likes the way the whiskey sells. All right, so next question. How long did you work for General Washington before becoming his distillery manager? I did not work very long for the General. I came along with my father. So my father had been looking for work for a few years now. Back when we were in Scotland, my father, I grew up very near to Edinburgh, Inverkeithing. And my father, he was not a distiller per se, not a large distiller, certainly, but he was supplying the distillers with the various grains. England had passed a law that disallowed all Scottish whiskey from being sold into London for a year. So that accounted for nearly 880,000 gallons of whiskey not being sold that year. Many went into bankruptcy, and my father, he did not fare too much better. And so it was in 91 that we got here. My father only came to work for the General last year in January 1st. And it was, I do not think we went until 12th night, until my father said, you know, you have rye and corn. 12th night is the 6th of January. So it was not a week before my father said, we should make whiskey. But I did not work for the General for very long. I was working for the General in that I was working alongside my father. The General much prefers that if you bring along a family, that family works alongside you. But honestly, only roughly a year, I would say. Good question. So let's see. What other questions do we have? Any medicinal uses for the spirits created at the distillery? Well, as I understand it, yes. I mean, Dr. Craig has certainly said that rum is useful when it comes to helping not only with helping with agues and fevers and all of that, but it helps with pain relief. It helps with cleansing wounds. I can imagine whiskey would be the same on this. I will say, General Washington, he is not a metaphysic, to be clear. I do not want you to get any wrong ideas here, but the General is of the opinion that wine, brandy, those sorts of drinks, those fruit drinks, tend to be a bit more helpful than the poisonous hogsheads, as he says, of rum that are coming out of the West Indies. And again, not a doctor, but there is a little story about this. And the Marquis de Chastellux, a friend of the General's, I believe this was in 1782. It was right at the end of the war. The General and his camp were in New York. The Marquis de Chastellux was going up to Massachusetts, and he was suffering an ague, which is malarial symptoms, shivers and the like, chills. And he met with the General, and the General takes one look at the Marquis, and he says, "Oh, Marquis, you seem to not have been acquainted with a good glass of wine. Being quite rare those days. So, as he said, the Marquis said he made me drink some 3 or 4 glasses of very fine Madeira, and then after that, one more very generous helping of claret. And he said this prescription was not repugnant to my feelings, as you can imagine, and I took to it quite religiously. Goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning, feels fantastic. Moves on to Massachusetts. So I do think that it gives you a sense of the curative benefits of wine. Yes, even though he may not be a doctor himself, there are curative benefits. Dr. Franklin, I should say, has said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I would say this is fairly true. You see those sailors, for instance, right? They end up contracting all sorts of diseases. Certainly, if you drink that water, you drink the water, there's water all around you, salt water, but not any to drink. So you bring along kegs of fresh water. That fresh water gets a bit slimy after a while. So you will add some sort of liquor to it. Liquor's cheap. Problem is, you get your water and you get your liquor. You might as well just put the water aside and drink the liquor, right? Not do what you're supposed to do and pour the liquor in the water. Or, even more insidious, you could accept your rum, hide it, wait for the next allotted ration, get your next allotted ration, hide that, wait for the next one, get the next one. Well, now I have 3 rations of rum. Now I'm ready to party, right? So, of course, you can imagine this was a problem for the captains. You can imagine this was a problem for the admirals. And so they decided, and this is a rather simple and elegant solution, to mix it. To just mix it together and then serve it. That means that it cleanses the water and keeps it a little bit more palatable. And at the same time, you're not just adding rum to water, you're adding water to rum. Rum, as far as we know, is fairly immortal, but you add water to rum, starts to water it down, gets a bit slimy. Now they have to drink it. You may be familiar with this. It's called grog. You could certainly add fruit to it, or you could certainly add sugar to it if you make port, but that's what that is. A lot of water, a little bit of rum. Not very appetizing. All right. Let's see. Next question. What does it mean to say it is fortified wine? So what that means is basically that you are adding alcohol to it. You are making it a stronger alcohol. This is not, so it's in the sense of you are going to be adding a sort of liquor or something to that. Bringing it up from that normal, what would you say, about 26 proof, roughly. It could get upwards of 30 proof. 40 proof, something like that. And so it just makes it that much stronger. And for that reason, because it's as strong as it is, that's why it can weather the hot ship holds. That's why it can weather all of that travel, because it's just quite simply stronger. Very good. Did the soldiers drink a watered down liquor? I mean, that all depends. Again, soldiers are not always going to be doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing. But they will be given out liquor because, I mean, honestly, beer goes quicker and wine is expensive. Wine is the thing that the general is drinking. He's not going to be drinking hard liquor, anything like that. Honestly, for the most part, I think that they're drinking their liquor as is. But it would not be unusual in the slightest to water down your liquor, to water down your wine. It stretches it a bit more, and it does keep you healthier. It keeps your wits about you. General Washington certainly is of the opinion that the moderate use of strong drink, the moderate use, is not to be avoided, truly. But it is just that, the moderate. The general is not a drunk. The general is a sober man. While he does enjoy a good drink, he is not the kind of man who thinks one should drink to drunkenness. And I think more than any other time in his life, he has seen such horrid examples of drunkenness in the military. You have sentries falling asleep at their posts. Of course, so many fights break out simply because of that. And so you will find people trying to mitigate the effects of the strong drink. In the West Indies, there were some soldiers. Their superiors thought, all right, well, we do not want to give them, for the same reasons, beer goes fast, wine is cheap. We do not want to give them any of that. But we do want to try to bring down the proof of what we are allotting them. And so what they ended up doing was they ended up buying old rum, not new rum. The new rum being the white rum, the old rum being the browner rum. Just takes a bit longer. It becomes more smooth and all of that. It's a bit more expensive, but it tends to be lower in proof a lot of the time. So do you know what they did? They gave out these rations of old rum. The soldiers, they took the rum, and you might think, oh, they might like it because it's aged and it's more pleasant, more palatable. They took that old rum, went to the nearest store, and traded in for even more new rum. So yes, they're always trying to figure out the admirals, the generals, the captains. They're always trying to figure out ways to keep their soldiers from becoming a bit too into their cups. But that will happen. That will happen. So watering it down is a way to mitigate, to prevent that. Good question. Any other? How long would the typical process take to make one barrel, and were these considered in terms of barrels, meaning as a measure of how these were sold. What is the cost in C18 terms of a barrel? I'm not certain I understand the C18 part. Barrel is a unit of measurement. We are selling them in casks of varying sizes. The unit of measurement that we are specifically, going by is gallons. When I am selling it is roughly 60 cents to $1 on the gallon. If you come and you bring your own cask, I could get you a discount, certainly. But your cask can be any sort of size. It can be a gallon cask. It can be 50 gallons. It could be a butt, right? It could be a full butt, which is a unit of measurement, a buttload. There's roughly 120 gallons, 130 gallons, something like that. It all depends on how much you wish to buy. Right? There are many people, there are many neighbors who will come by, and they will just have a little bit of money. They'll buy 1 or 2, 3, 4 gallons, something like that. So how long it will take, typically, to go to your previous question. Let's see. So you're going to end up taking the grain, first off, the rye and the corn. Now, this will be malted. The corn will be malted. That is to say, it's tricked into germination. And then it will start to grow. It will start to grow, and then you'll crush it, pulverize it. And in that, it will turn the starches to sugars. So I will take all of that, the pulverized rye, the pulverized corn, wheat if we run out as well, but mainly rye and corn. And I will then put that into a large cask. So it goes into this large cask with boiled water, and then we take what is it looks like a bit like an ore, but it has let's see, I don't really have anything to there. It has a pole, and then it goes down, and there are tines on the sides like that. I stick that in. This is called a mash rake, and I'm quite literally rowing it. Difficult to do seated. So that will take about 15, 30, 45 minutes, depending. It is the consistency of oatmeal at this point. Then I will leave that. I will leave that for about 3, maybe upwards of 5 days. It could take upwards of 9 days. And I will leave that specifically for the third ingredient. We had grain, we had water. The third ingredient, yeast, will then be added to it. So now this third ingredient, I can add it, certainly. There is yeast naturally in the air, just floating around. There's yeast in the fruit trees, yeast from the grist mill, all of that. So the yeast will naturally get to it, and it will start to eat the sugars inside. So after about, as I said, 3, 5, 9 days, something like that, then I will have what is called distiller's beer. It's technically beer. Technically. It is stronger than beer, I will say, and it is certainly chewy. It's not something you would like to drink, but still, again, technically beer. And so now, at this point, I want to make it a bit stronger. I've not distilled anything yet. I've only brewed. The only difference between a brewer and a distiller, really, is that I just do not stop at brewing. So now, what I want to do is I want to put it into the still. I put it into one of our large copper stills. These are pot stills. These narrow a bit like that. Put it in the still. Light a fire underneath it. For the record, by the way, in case any of you are wondering, you want to keep your temperature around 165, 175. Do not let it get up to 200 or 210, 212. You are going to end up burning the water along with the whiskey. You do not want that. You want to make it as strong as possible. So now you will leave it, right? You will keep checking it, checking the temperature and all of that. After a while, you'll start to see the vapor coming off the top. So now you want to capture that. You will take what looks like a smoking pipe, right? But it's a very large version, and you flip it over. So now the bulbous end of that pipe, it goes right on top. It fills it up. This is called the onion, this bulbous end. Fills it up and starts to pressurize, pushing its way down the tube, which connects then to a coil. This is called the worm. It coils down into a small cask. I run cold water over that coil into that cask. And then what will end up happening, so long as I have my temperatures correct, is it will come out condensing into nice, clear whiskey. And a bit of water, but mostly whiskey, and I will put it through at least one more time, if not 3 more times. And so that whole process probably will end up taking about 1.5 to 2 weeks. And that's it. I mean, you might wish to age it yourself, but I want to sell it, so I'm not aging it. Let's see, how profitable was the distillery for General Washington? Quite profitable, certainly. I will tell you that if we do end up making 9, 10, pushing 11,000 gallons, something like that, at roughly 60 cents, at roughly $1 on the gallon, we are probably going to end up getting upwards of probably over 1,000 gallons, or dollars, excuse me, probably over $1,000 pure profit. That's a lot of money. I will tell you right now, General Washington, as I said earlier, I don't know if many of you have heard me, General Washington is not a wealthy man in terms of cash. General Washington is the kind of man who, when he is going to purchase something, very typically, he is paying much as you do, with credit or with loans. Right? That, of course, comes along with debt, which is problematical, particularly when you do not have a fair bit of liquidity in the first place. And so General Washington, with $1,000, will probably be able to pay off his debt. $2,000 probably from the livestock, the pigs that will be fed from it. We could probably get upwards of $2,000 pure profit. To put that into perspective, Mr. Farrell, he is the overseer of Mansion Farm. Mr. Farrell is making $133.33 a year. Not bad. That is a very nice salary, right? I am making, let's see, for this year, 11 months work, roughly 66 pounds. You might be wondering what that is converted. That's roughly $180, $190 in a year. I will get upwards of probably $240 in a year. That is at least $20 a month next year. I am exceedingly well paid. $240 a year is excellent. So I can tell you right now, $2,000 a year, I personally don't think I'd have to work again. So exceeding popular. If you want to make money, make something people cannot do without. And there are a few things people cannot do without more than whiskey. Very good. Next question. I could speak a bit more on the profitability of it, or is there another question that we... Can you see me? I can. Well, anyways, I might as well continue to talk, I suppose, even though I see no new question. Or actually, I think I could pick a question myself, if I understand correctly. Oh, and that is a very good point, actually. That should be said. The first round of distillation creates a form of alcohol that is poisonous. Yes, this is quite true. This, you might know it to be called methanol. I just know it as something that will turn you potentially blind, or it can end up hurting your internal organs and all of that. So what you want to do, I will end up just putting it through again, personally. I do not mind. In such large amounts of the regular whiskey, that amount of whiskey is negligible. But if you are considering doing this yourselves, I would recommend that when it starts coming out, my whiskey ends up tasting a bit like green apple. There's no green apple in it. But when it stops tasting like green apple and starts tasting more like whiskey, more like grainy, sort of not in the tips of your mouth, but more on the sides of your mouth, then you want to take that, throw that out, and start collecting. That is the head cut. What you want is the heart. At the end, you're going to end up with things that are fairly, it's watery, it's going to be a bit funky in taste. That's the tail. You could certainly put that through again. You could throw it out if you wish. It's mostly water. I put it through again. But yes, that is worth saying out loud that you should be very careful of the head cut. The head cut, that can turn you blind. Didn't the House of Burgesses have to change a law on alcohol at polling places after an election Washington was involved in? Yeah, and for good reason. So the South is generally considered to be a bit more aristocratical than the North, which you could perhaps consider to be more democratical. So, did everyone lose? Have people lost connection? I cannot quite tell. Oh, I am. So General Washington, he wanted to be a Burgess, and so he stood for election. And in this, it's not as I said, democratical, where you're trying to gauge the will of the people, right? In this, you're trying to gauge the will of the people, but you're trying to gauge the will of the people based on what you give them. And so in this case, you are giving alcohol, you're giving strong drink. So let me see. General Washington, very early on, it was in 1755, General Washington was trying to stand for the House of Burgess. As a result of his not paying any of the people, any of the electors, any alcohol, not giving them any sort of strong drink, well, he lost. So 2 years later, General Washington decided to try again. That, by the way, he lost the election 271 to 270 to 40. It was not a good time for him. So, oh, I'm sorry, forgive me, 3 years later, he decided to try again. And so in this point, he employed a different strategy. Now he's purchasing large quantities of alcohol, and he's telling those to give freely, as much as possible, to prospective voters. He gave away 47 gallons of beer, more than 70 gallons of rum punch, 34.5 gallons of wine, 2 gallons of cider, 3.5 pints of brandy, and he paid almost 40 pounds for that. And I bet you know what happened. He won. But yes, as you can see, it is a bit more aristocratical in function. The War for Independence, and afterwards, after the Federal Convention, aristocracy, and particularly after the French Revolution, is not near as popular as it used to be. And so it's the kind of thing that nowadays people are trying to brush under the rug as much as possible. All right. Any other questions? Share General Washington's receipt for whiskey. Yes. So I would say, and I say receipt, you say recipe, but I would say roughly, you could not go wrong, I think, with roughly 60%, maybe to 40% rye and corn. If you want to add some barley, that certainly would be fine as well. Maybe a 20th, something like that. A minor amount of barley. And then I should say, you can probably add wheat. As I said before, you can add wheat if you like. We are probably only going to add wheat if the general runs out of the rye, runs out of the corn. We have been thinking, I will say, recently of making a cinnamon whiskey. I don't know. I'm not too experimental with it. I have simple tastes myself, but we'll see how it goes. But it's as simple as that. A bit more rye, 3 parts to 2 parts rye and corn, roughly speaking. All right. Did General Washington give his whiskey as gifts to visitors of Mount Vernon? Yes, in fact. So General Washington gave gifts, certainly, to the visitors of Mount Vernon. It was not always whiskey. Whiskey is more of a common person's drink, although certainly that is done. If you come to Mount Vernon, you're going to be presented with a great many different drinks. For instance, when you come to Mount Vernon, it is said that within a few minutes, Mrs. Washington will descend upon you with a great helping of rum punch, and in a very particular kind of bowl. They used to have nice kind of bowls just from Britain itself, old ceramic like that, but now they're getting the nice ceramic from China. Very, very fine things through Britain. And this rum punch itself, it is rum, fruit juices, sugar, spices, and water. I will say I do not know the exact ingredient, the exact amounts that go into it, but that is all it is. I personally think that you should just do it to your taste. One rule matters above all when it comes to drink, and that is do not let anybody tell you how to take your drink. Okay? All right. So, excellent question. I suppose at this point, I am going to begin to close this. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you all for spending this time with me. I suppose that is all of the questions we're going to touch on, but yes, thank you. I am your humble and obedient servant, John Anderson, Distillery Manager. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.